Hi, my name is Kenneth Hills of Selling Decisions. I'm going to make a quick presentation to you. I'm going to start by giving you an overview of how I solve marketing problems from a theoretical perspective, and then in the latter part of this quick presentation I'm just going to address some of the issues you raise in the proposal. Okay, so as I say, my name is Kenneth Hills. I've been running a small marketing consultancy for a while, and this is what I'm going to talk about right now is essentially standard MBA marketing concepts, but rooted in a little bit of experience that I've had, which I don't necessarily see anywhere else. So first of all, there are three really key elements that you have to get right if you're going to win and grow in the marketplace. One of them is a competitive strategy. The other is the value chain configuration, which is essentially almost saying the same thing except putting it into reality. So you've got to look at the external market, you've got to look at what you do well, and then you've got to configure a business able to deliver that. And that's not just talking about the product. I'll go into the value chain concept, where there are sort of 7 different distinct areas where you can obtain a competitive advantage, and you don't really know which one that is until you look at the market. And the last one is bureaucracy, and I mean that in a positive sense, in the sense of once you understand exactly what your competitive strategy is and what your value chain configuration, you've looked at industry structure and where you are in all that, there's a certain organizational type that is suited to whatever competitive advantage you're trying to implement. And I'll quickly look at that. And a lot of plans suffer because they don't really take that properly into consideration. So if we look at competitive strategy, what I'm talking about here is classic Porter stuff, which is the 5 forces. It might seem theoretical, but it's really very, very practical. You're looking at the way buyers buy, you're looking at your suppliers, you're looking at your competitors, you're looking at options that your buyers have outside of your immediate strategic group, and you're looking at what players might be playing in your market in the future, and you always should be looking at that. And that's often because big boys play in people's markets, not necessarily directly, but through affiliates or through strategic partnerships and things like this, and they do affect the way things get bought and sold. The brick and mortar is obviously still an important part of the way you do business. That's fine, but you can't ignore the online aspect of the way buyers buy now, because 80-90% of people who buy whatever product it is will actually go online first and check it out. So your digital presence is not irrelevant at all to your ultimate sales success, even though sometimes it's difficult to pinpoint its influence. There is a significant change in the last 10 years in the way buyers buy. And that's just all there is to it. And if you get it right, you can do rather well. To go on to the value chain. So again, this is just a theoretical structure about how all businesses operate. And I'm going to be talking about marketing sales as a way of going forward, which is of your focus in the proposal. That doesn't mean the other aspects aren't important. They are. I'm just not going to talk about that particularly right now. But we are going to, if I get to talk to you, I'll talk about your competitive strategy and the sort of strategic moves that you need to make to be successful, to go and either make sure you'll eat or and not be eaten. As I said, the digital aspect is a critical component of the way people do business. It just is, and it doesn't matter how brick and mortar your business is, it's still relevant. And that's essentially because the way people buy, the old-fashioned sales point 1-0 just doesn't really work. I mean, it's not that you can't get sales, but it's just not cost-effective compared to the way you can do. And competitive strategy, if it's anything, it's about trying to achieve above industry level profits. And sales point 1 is not the way to go and do that anymore. And so if we look at the value chain, you can get competitive advantage anyway here, but certainly sales and marketing is a way. Better sales and marketing will get you is potentially a source of competitive advantage. And so it sounds to me like you have a plan that hasn't been going very well. That's not uncommon. It's very difficult to get it right. But I certainly can help you with that. And then the other aspect here is the business model itself. And so we're talking about not just the way you bring your product to market in a competitive sense. We're also talking the way your organization is organised to execute on its core work, its operating core, and the supporting systems that go along with it. This is actually surprisingly detrimental to your competitive strategy, so that has to be done right as well, and that's often overlooked. And there's various models that you can apply which are very useful, and I particularly like this one, which is an old Mintzberg model, which is, it's not that simple to understand, but it's actually a really practical tool. It doesn't look like it, but it is. So I tend to use that in my analysis as well, and this is because, you know, ultimately the people and the way they work is essentially critical to what you do. And that's all there is to it. Now, where you are in this, I do like the old Greiner growth model. I'm not sure where you are in this, but you've been going quite a long time, and you're not going to be in the early part of those phases. You're somewhere in phase 3, 4, 5, or 6. You know, somewhere. I wouldn't be able to say until we looked at it more closely. But the point about this, again, this is an organizational aspect. It refers to the way your bureaucracy and your company must organize to execute on whatever plan that you have, and there are reasons why we do things in a certain way. One of the things I'd ask you to do is challenge some of your assumptions. What we usually find is that, especially for businesses who've been a long time, they tend to have very fixed views on the way things are. And that may be fine. I mean, they may be right. But if I've learned anything, one of the things that brings companies down or makes it hard for them to progress is the fact that they don't necessarily understand the world outside their organization as well as they think they do. And that's because the market is always changing. It's because we tend to, not just business people, but we all tend to find comfort in what we think we know. And it's very clear that the world changes fast, and we have to keep an open mind, essentially, about what it is that we need to do. And there's a reason why companies end up in the middle, and it's not because they want to be there. It's because things happen and they don't really understand what's happening to them. So if we want to be better, we sometimes have to rethink our thinking, and that's what I'd urge us to do here. The other thing is that, you know, this is a very old quote, but it's a good one. It's to be successful and to grow your business and revenues, you must match the way you market your products with the way your prospects learn about and shop for your products. And that's more true than ever, because, as I say, that's a reference to the online, the way people process and learn information about products is radically different to the way it was 10 years, even just 10 years ago. So that has to be taken into account in any marketing plan. And so you may have had poor experience with social media, for example. A lot of people do, and that's because they just don't do it right, so they assume it doesn't work. That's not true. Social media, it has become an absolutely essential component of successful business strategy, and I can find a huge number of examples of that. That's not saying it's the only thing you should be doing, and I'm not saying it's the most critical thing you should do. I'm not saying that at all. But certainly social media is an aspect that should be part of any competitive strategy. It just must be. And, you know, the people that you have and the people you hire are critical. So I would argue that I have a particularly good understanding of what a marketing plan needs to look at, what information you need to get, how to set your corporate goals, and then how to build an organization to execute on that, and how to build an operational excellence to execute on that as well. And that includes things like the Infusionsoft that you mentioned. I'm very experienced in that particular CRM. I built a lot of workflow. I like it. I think it's a very good solution for small, medium businesses, and it has a lot of capacity, and it's improved a lot actually over the last few years as well. So that's fine. And you absolutely do need to link that, say, to your email campaigns, your landing pages, the way you're delivering information, infographics, white papers, whatever it is that information you're putting out there as part of the selling experience. And it's also a great tool for managing something what I like to call the buyer's journey, which is absolutely critical. from the very start, when the person that you hope to sell to, the prospect or lead, whatever you want to call it, becomes aware of your product, all the way through to purchase, and most importantly, post-purchase. There's a lot of marketing that gets wrong because the customer journey is not properly understood. And I have a particularly good model which I developed myself around the customer journey, which radically alters the way we communicate to people, and I've discovered it's much more effective. It's recent. I've only just started applying it, but it's extraordinarily interesting. So that's essentially all I wanted to say right now. And I could go into more detail on all aspects of that, particularly the thing about the customer journey, which I think I've discovered is a really, really important part of a strategic framework for messaging. So let me then now look specifically at some of the things you bring up in your proposal.